And I bring my picture in. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Opportunity Makers. I'm super excited to be welcoming Julie Cafley this morning. Dr. Julie Cafley is the newly appointed Executive Director of Catalyst Canada. But as now is my habit, I would like to start by reading my land acknowledgement. So I want to acknowledge our First Peoples who for thousands of years before us and who still are the keepers of this land and caretakers of this land where we all now work and live. In particular, in Muskoka, where I am located, I want to acknowledge the Chippewas of Rama, the Wahata First Nations of Bala, and the Moon River Métis and Inuit. I'm dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of truth and reconciliation with respect to all First Nations and Métis people. So wherever you are joining us from, I hope that you can take a moment just quietly and acknowledge the peoples where you live and work. So thank you very much for allowing me that opportunity to say that. So, my goodness, I'm missing in all the pictures. There we go. All right. As I said, my guest this morning is Dr. Julie Cafley. And she is the brand new, I think only a couple of months in, Director of Catalyst Canada, celebrating their 60th year of bringing issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity to the forefront in our organizations. And I'm just so delighted that she's been able to join us this morning. Now, I say that she is a little late because airplanes do what airplanes do, and they cancel. Well, I guess it's not the airplane that canceled the flight, but she will be joining us shortly. But in the meantime, I want to welcome Janet Piper. Janet Piper is the Senior Director of Corporate Engagement for Catalyst Canada. So thank you, Janet, for the very last moment this morning. You turned panic into opportunity.
Oh, Libby. Yes, it's my pleasure.
Here. Yes. And Janet and I go way back to the time that we spent together at Mackenzie Investments, which was, tons of fun and doing fantastic work. And it was Janet who introduced me, at least, or the sales team, to Catalyst Canada.
That's right.
And then you loved it so much, you left us and you joined Catalyst Canada.
Yes.
So while we, and how many years ago is that now?
That's probably 2018. I've been at Catalyst now just over 4 years.
Wow.
So yeah, I remember thinking when I first met Catalyst, I'm like, wow, you could do this as a full-time job. I'm like, sign me up. And here we are. But I wouldn't have had that opportunity had it not been for the time I spent at Mackenzie in a community investment role. So your journey goes in different places, right?
It does.
You never know.
And we always come back, right? We always come back together.
Right. And I think that's a very good point about your work life, your work journey. It's the people you meet, right? So I have friends from my time at Mackenzie, even though it was a short period of time. And those friendships will carry me the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. So while we wait for Julie, why don't you share for anybody who's on the call this morning, and I'm going to I'm just looking over here, say hello. If you are here, we've got a few people here so far. I've got the comment box open. If you've got any questions that you want Julie or Janet to answer, please feel free to put that in the chat and I'll keep a watch on that. But to get us started, for anybody who might not be as familiar about Catalyst Canada and the work that you do, because it's more than I thought.
Right.
You did. I had one experience with Catalyst Canada, which was fantastic. It was a presentation, but you do a lot of work. So why don't you just describe some of the things that you do and what it is that you are trying to achieve as an organization?
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Libby. This is such a great opportunity and really appreciate the time you've made available to us to talk about our organization and the work that we do. You may not know that we just had our 60th anniversary. So we've been around for a long time, and we are a global nonprofit. So our roots are, we started in New York 60 years ago when women were coming into the workforce. And Felice Schwartz, our founder, really wanted to provide resources and help women who were coming into the workforce at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine our work has evolved since then. We've grown, so we're now in regions around the world, including in Canada, where I think we've been around for 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And primarily our focus has always been on research. We're well known for our research. And as you say, we have evolved beyond gender. It's always going to be our lead foot and our focus, but it's expanded so much more. We do research on engaging men. We
Yep.
do research on gender, race, and ethnicity. And we do research on the future of work. This is more new research for us. And we do research on inclusive workplaces. And then from that, there's all these wonderful tools and solutions and programs. And we network and we connect with each other because this work is hard. So having a community of colleagues and partners that we work with really helps us advance equity
Yes.
in the workplace. That's fundamentally what we do.
Yeah. Fantastic. And, 60 years, you think, oh, 60 years, it's a pretty good run. I read, kind of off topic, but I read Lessons in Chemistry this summer. Pure fiction.
I don't know this book.
Pure fiction, but not. Because the main character of the story, and I've forgotten what her name is, she's a scientist working in a man's world in the 1950s. And you name it, it happened to her. And it really is incredible. There are some days when I think those of us in this gender in which we live don't feel the advancements, but most of the time we do. And we know things are always moving in a better direction, a more inclusive direction, an equitable direction. But like 60 years, that was I'm actually surprised you lasted the first 10. It wasn't until the 70s, I think, that Gloria Steinem came onto the stage, right?
Yeah, no,
maybe late 60s. I don't know my history there.
Yeah,
I'll not prepared, obviously.
Yeah, we'll have to go back and look at that continuum, that history, that timeline.
Yep.
But yeah, no, there's lots that's happened. There's movements that happen, right? That exponentially drive things, but it's in the little details. It's in the the individual work, the individual effort.
Mm-hmm.
In my works, what I do day to day is work with diversity, equity, inclusion practitioners at organizations whose purpose aligns with our purpose, right? Our mission. At our heart, we're a mission-driven organization working to advance equity in the workplace. Yeah. And so it really, it does, sometimes it feels like, my goodness, where are we? What, this is, but then you have conversations with people and they talk about what's happening at their organization and what they've done that day. And I'm inspired all over again. So, and it's in conversations like this too, where we can talk about our work and what we're doing to advance equity, that I think, broadens the audience and maybe has people think about, what is my role, like personally in this and also in the organization. So lots of work to be done still, but still inspires me every day, and still grateful to be at Catalyst doing this work.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to steal Julie's thunder for when she arrives. And we've had the text shortly.
Okay, great.
She will be here.
Yeah.
And we will welcome her with open arms.
Yes, indeed.
But now what was I going to say? You talked about the fact that a lot of your work, where you're playing in corporate engagement, your inroad is the, I'm assuming if it's the DE&I responsibility, the team, the person, whatever that might be, that tends to be in an HR function.
Correct. Yes.
And not always, but often. And I thought it was really interesting that where my first inroad into catalyst was the head of sales.
Yes.
Is the person. Now that may have been influenced, maybe Catalyst talked to, HR first, etc. But it really is the businesses
100%.
that need to drive
100%.
these initiatives, not, and no offense to the wonderful, beautiful HR people
Well, they're
who
the backbone,
who
right?
are out there
Yeah,
and
they're the
potentially listening
backbone.
right now.
Yeah,
Pardon?
they're the backbone of the work, but it really
Yeah.
is the business leaders, people leaders across an organization that can really affect change.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great example. That opportunity to come in and talk to the sales team, or IT teams, or you name it. That's the real power
Mm-hmm.
of the work, is when business leaders prioritize it as it's a business strategy for them, right?
Yes, yes. And so I think that that's one of the focuses that Julie certainly has moving forward, is strengthening that opportunity for the category to become not a strategic initiative. I think there's a difference between a strategic initiative and a strategic driver.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
100%.
what are
Yeah.
the things that are going to drive you versus what can we do about this thing?
Right. If it's a part,
Yeah.
it's your business strategy,
Yes.
then you're right. It's a different, you're going to approach it differently, if you will, right? It's
Yeah.
just embedded, right?
Yeah.
We're going to just treat this like any other strategy we're working on.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
one just tends to, it can be a little complex and complicated.
Exactly. Yes.
But they all are, right?
Curry's just said, yes, leadership team needs to lead.
Yes.
And
Oh my
Curry,
goodness.
was his last corporate role was CAO for town manager for Clarington. And so that's, these are big organizations. They're not just downtown. You and I come from financial. We tend to think of Bay Street, but this is everywhere across the board.
Yes.
Every organization.
Yeah. And the senior leadership piece for me, I say it all the time. I ask the question, where is the executive leadership team on this, the senior leadership team? Like, who are the allies in the C-suite, right? And the CEO. And it's so critical. It really is so critical.
Yeah. So the other thing that I think is, well, not another thing, I think there is a myth. So if we talk about it's not an initiative, it's a driver. That's sort of one thing that you would want. I agree. You would want people to be thinking about. The other is that it is not women's work.
No.
To make this happen. And one of the things that really impresses me is that you have and are strengthening a whole area around the male advocacy.
Yes.
And so why don't you share a little bit about what those programs are and how the men in our organizations are taking the lead, not how they need to. That sounds a little, it's like you've got men who are taking the lead. So what are some of those experiences that you're having with men in organizations?
Yeah, no, it's actually one of our pillars of research is engaging men. And we know from that research that having men at the table in this work is critical to advancing equity. And out of our research, Catalyst has developed a program called Men Advocating Real Change. And it's a fantastic program. It's really meant to first and foremost, bring men together with women from the organization. Like, it's never going to be just men or just women, but men and women together. And basically talking and sharing with men and giving them an opportunity to hear from women and their experiences at the workplace. Yeah. And it's really interesting. I've had the great fortune to kind of participate in a MARC program, and men talk about afterward, I didn't know, right? I didn't know what my colleague was experiencing. I didn't know that, perhaps they were struggling with some things that I just took for granted. And it's difficult, right? It's not easy to say, it's not easy for anyone to be like, how are you doing? And really know what to do with that information. And I think our MARC program really gives a space and a place for men to recognize their own role in helping equity. It makes for a better workplace. It makes for a better society, quite frankly, right?
Yeah.
So my experience with our MARC program has just been, it's one of my favorite things, I think, at Catalyst, is watching and being part of men's experience. We just had an event, oh my gosh, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It's like, who knows timing anymore? And it was sessions about men as allies. And it was fantastic. Lots of great speakers. Just an opportunity to, again, think, reflect, and determine actions. That's also a big part of it.
Yeah. And so my sense is that you have men from a number of different organizations, men and women from a number of different organizations coming together to talk about these issues, as opposed to, making something happen in a specific organization.
I know most of the time it's within the organization.
Okay.
And so, the opportunity is for, Catalyst to help facilitate conversation through activity, through conversation, just through reflection.
Yeah.
It normally is within the organization. We do have cases where we bring, what we would call cross company, but more often organizations want to have this for, they want their own employees to experience this first. So,
well, and I think it's also, bringing the collective together and starting the conversation in the organization is going to be more powerful than somebody going off to a public program and coming back excited, but not knowing how to implement.
Yeah, you know what? I think this is the hardest, this difficult conversations, right? This extends across so much, right? Like when we think of the last 2 years, through COVID, after the murder of George Floyd, the Me Too movement, this is Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
There's really been this, I hope this shift that we saw of people having moments of understanding their role in this work, and that it's, you've got to, as an individual, be vulnerable and reflective of your own responsibility. Yes. So, and having difficult conversations is a really critical part of that. And it's interesting because we talk all the time, I hear this all the time, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But then when you're really in an uncomfortable situation, it's hard, right? It's really hard. You don't want to be there, but you want to get out of it.
Yeah.
And we have some great tools just on helping, people do that very thing, have difficult conversation. I think if anybody kind of walks away from this conversation that we're having, is to think about your own responsibility in this work, and that difficult conversations are part of it. And if you open yourself up to that, it can be, it's a game changer.
And I'm assuming difficult often for the individual who needs to advocate for themselves.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right?
We put a lot of pressure on people of color, Indigenous people, to speak about their lived experiences, to help educate white people. I'm a white person. I'm a privileged, I'm a settler, right? And that we need to be as in places of privilege. You can't always be putting that, that causes this emotional tax. Catalyst has research on this, and the implications of emotional tax for Indigenous people and people of color in Canada. And it's really worthwhile reading to understand emotional tax, right? And what your colleagues are experiencing in the workplace. When I say you, I mean you and me as white people. We need to do the work, right? Yes. And we need to be okay that when the work gets uncomfortable, that you're going to come out of it. You're going to learn something about yourself, and maybe you're going to just be different in the workplace, be better.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things that we can all be better with is understanding this idea of microaggressions.
Yes.
I mean, my generation, I probably have many, many, many little sayings that I learned, didn't understand them then, didn't realize the implications and how they could really be very offensive and insulting to other people. I'm just wondering, in the context of, this back to work movement, and not just women, but I think there's a lot of conversation about women looking after children, and now they have to go to the office, and that's challenging for them. But how does a man stand up for himself and advocate for himself? And what are all of the either fears or realities around the microaggressions and that kind of thing that might occur
Yeah.
when we're trying to get through this? And just before you answer that or comment on it, wasn't a question. I don't know if once we're broadcasting live, if a person can actually come in. And we've got about 8 minutes left. So still, if Julie can join us, that's
Julie,
fantastic. And if she's not joining us live, then I hope she's listening and watching.
I don't know.
And if you are, make a comment, Julie, in the chat.
I'll ask her if she's okay. So the question is not the question, the comment for reflection was on microaggressions, but you've tied it to the kind of return to work scenario. Yeah. Well, I heard someone say sort of through COVID, and then, are we in a post-COVID? It feels like we're building the plane as we fly it. And it's felt like that for 2 years, in our future of work research, we've done a lot on the impact of COVID on inclusion and equity. And now we're coming out of COVID. What does that look like? I mean, we have an office in downtown Toronto, and I certainly see a lot more people in the office. We read about it in the paper, right? Organizations asking employees to come back. Some are more, I guess the requirements are like 2 days a week these days, right? I think this is going to be really interesting, to review 3 months, 6 months, 9 months out, because there are huge swaths of people who don't want to, right? Like their lives have been made easier by being, for women in particular, with care, whether it's childcare or other care that they provide on top of the full-time job, have benefited from being able to be able to work at home. And for all intents and purposes, I think the productivity is still there, right? Like it's just in the simple things. And so on the question about microaggressions, like that balancing the workplace, where you'll have people who want to continue to work at home and have the flexibility to do so, and there'll be those who want to be back in the office. I'm kind of in the middle, right? I like to go into the office. I like to be I get some energy with my colleagues. So you'll have those who'll have to come back, right? It might be a requirement of the role. Maybe I'm not sure. And then you'll have those who don't want to, don't have to. And then you're the huge swaths in the middle. And how companies how they manage that through the next several months, I think is going to be really interesting. And the microaggressions piece too, like, we even pre-pandemic, we would talk at Catalyst about, who gets the hot jobs, right? Like who gets on the big projects, who has the visibility at the meetings, how is that all shifting and changing in a hybrid workplace? And what do microaggressions look like through this, right? This kind of new reimagined workplace, I think will be really interesting for the sociologists among us.
Yes, I obviously can't say who I was having the conversation with, but the comment from leadership was, if you still want to progress your career, the way to do that is to be visible. And to be visible means to be in the office. And it's like, that makes no sense.
It really doesn't.
That's not only I don't know what that is. That's like, my head office is in Toronto, and therefore only people in Toronto, because they're in the Toronto office, or if you're headquartered in Calgary, that just doesn't make sense. Period. Pre-pandemic, because people work from all over if you're in another office. So there's just so many misconceptions. We miss the camaraderie. Do you miss the productivity?
Yeah,
They'll say 2 months from now.
yeah, right. I mean, I think it's, for me, what in the conversations that I have, I would say that any organization that prioritizes the employee and have them make the choice of
Yeah.
what works for them, and then you need to be really intentional if you're going to provide that choice, that when you have, just to keep it simple, but meetings that are virtual and hybrid,
Yeah.
that you're not excluding the people that are joining via Zoom or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have to really work at making sure all the inclusion practice is still in place.
Yes.
So it's going to be, we're watching.
Yes. And I'm going to be excited to read about it and hear about it. We've got 3 minutes left. I'm just seeing a comment here. Carrie Myers saying, "You're both so bang on." Thank you, Carrie.
Oh,
Thank you, Carrie.
Nice. It helps when you know each other, right? Like, there's just you're a friend.
I know.
You're easy to
We're just
talk
chatting. Are we
Yeah,
live?
we're just
Are we
chatting.
doing something?
This
Let's
isn't
keep
work.
it clean. We're on LinkedIn. So I'm so sorry that we were unable to link Julie in this morning. Dr. Julie Cafley, she is a
She's
dream.
fantastic, by the way. So
Yes,
I'm sorry
she
you
really is. I
you
had
got
the
me instead of
opportunity
her.
to just, we had a little pre-call, the three of us, last week, and
Yes.
talked about this. And so for sure, I will invite her back, and maybe we'll do something. I've never done a panel before. Maybe we'll do a little bit of a panel and think of something fun and interesting that we can do. Maybe bring some of your Mark folks in.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, no, that would be, we would love that, of course.
Yeah.
It's really, it's where we actually see change.
Yes.
We see change.
Yeah. So I'm going to move to our end slide that shows a beautiful picture of me and Julie. And I'm just going to put you and me on the bottom of this. So I know, maybe it's just the hair color is a little different. You're not wearing a green jacket. This is not Julie Cafley, but rather the wonderful, talented, and incredibly gifted Janet Piper, senior director of corporate engagement. This is Julie's email that you see on this. Oh, wait a second. I haven't sent this slide. This is some contact information. There we go. All right. So everybody knows you're here because you saw an invitation from me. So you know my contact info, but this is Julie's direct email and her phone number. URJ Piper at catalyst.org. And is that a main number, or is that Julie's direct number?
That's probably her, like a cell number or work. It's a phone number kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably connects to her work line.
Yeah. So, call Julie.
Yeah.
Get in touch with Janet. Lots of folks that you can get in touch with at Catalyst. Thank you, Janet. I mean, you stepped in like the best trooper in the world.
You made it easy.
I think the text started coming in at 7:00, even earlier this morning, like, what's going to happen here?
These things
panel
happen.
of 3. Oh, hold on a second. Notion has said a panel of 3 would be fabulous. So we will think about doing that, and a panel discussion. Stacy Dakin or Dakin.
Oh, Stacy.
Says a panel would be great with your insights very much in line. And Carl says, you remember Carl from Mackenzie? I don't know if you remember.
I
I don't know if he was there before you left, but Janet filled in great.
Thank you,
Looking
Carl.
forward to the panel. All
Your
right. Well,
check's
it
in the
sounds
mail.
like we're going to have to do this with a panel. He agrees. So,
Okay, we're on it.
so Janet, thank you
Thank you,
for
Libby.
everything. Fabulous conversation. This will be available for replay, and of course, more great opportunities, more with Catalyst and other opportunity makers out there. So keep in touch. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, make sure that we get connected. And we will see you next time. For those in Canada tuning in, have a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend. We'll see you all soon.